What's up guys, Lucky Locks here. Welcome back to another prediction video. This is going to be for LFA 123. We have Dan Argueta versus Mairon Santos in the main event and should be a really good card. I gotta say there's a lot of really good matchmaking on this card. Not very much low-hanging fruit in terms of making picks, doing breakdowns, and making bets. So it's a bit of a tricky card in my opinion. So with that said, let's get right into the action and talk about some of these fights. First fight on the card, we have a featherweight matchup between Motaz Askar and Garrett Sharp. And Askar is a 23-year-old prospect. He is the brother of Askar, who is in the co-main of this LFA card. He is coming into this bout off a win over Alberto Rodriguez, who is also on this card. He had a 7-0 amateur career with some good ones there, 2-0 as a pro, and out of his 9 total fights, he does have 5 finishes. With regard to his striking, he's got good hands. He's a dangerous striker. He's got a good jab. He's a sharp boxer. Has some nice kicks as well. Obviously, we got to mention that sweet head kick to ground and pound KO he got in his pro debut. And we've seen some good wrestling from him too. Some inside trips. He's got a good low center of gravity. Strong in the clinch. Good top game. Looks to pass guard. We've seen him do that and take dominant positions. Get to the mount. Sharp, on the other hand, is also coming off a good amateur career. He was 6-1 there, and he is now 2-1 as a pro with 2 submissions. Not super strong competition, I will note. I definitely think that Askar has faced the tougher guys leading up to this fight. Sharp hasn't fought anyone as a pro with a winning record thus far, and has a combined opponent record of 1-8. Askar is coming off a really good win over a guy that we'll talk about next in Alberto Rodriguez. Sharp has subbed an 0-0 guy, then submitted a 1-6 guy, and then lost his next match to an 0-2 opponent by TKO/KO. And that was to Mike Wilson, who actually has shown to be pretty decent since then, but still not the highest level of competition there. And I don't really think striking is where Sharp is going to find success in this match. I think that, he's shown some wrestling on tape. He's a good grappler. He's 5 submissions between his pro and amateur fights, and I think that that's probably where he's going to be able to have the most success. But to be honest, guys, I think that Askar is a really promising prospect. I feel like he, at this point in their careers, is just that slight step above. I think he's a bit of a cut above. I really like him as a prospect. I think that LFA likes him as well, and I'm going to go with Motaz Askar to get the win here. He is a pretty massive favorite at this point, somewhere in the minus 500 range, I believe. So I don't really think I'm going to be having too much. I mean, we'll see when props come out if there's something that looks good, but I'll probably just sit back and watch this one. But I do think that Motaz Askar is going to get this one done to kick off the night. Next up, we have Alberto Rodriguez and Beau Samaniego, also at featherweight. And this is an interesting matchup here. Rodriguez is a 3-1 pro, made a successful LFA debut at LFA 102 against Chris McCate as a pretty big underdog there. His one loss as a pro is to Motaz Askar, who we just talked about. Rodriguez has 2 finishes, one of them coming early in round 1, knockout in his last LFA fight. Really nice finish. And the other one is a knee bar submission, and he is a BJJ black belt. He's training with some good guys at Valley Flow Striking. He trains with Carlos Hernandez, Ignacio Bahamondes, and he's cornered both of those guys in the past. With regard to his striking, he uses feints. He's also a 5th degree Taekwondo black belt, so I think that's interesting to note. So he does have good kicks. He'll go low, go to the body, go high, and normally his striking is a lot more kick heavy rather than using the punches. He does have some elbows that he likes to mix in, and he was able to catch Chris McCate with a right hook square on the chin, which put him down in his last fight. Beautiful strike there, and really nice finishing sequence. And he has a really good jiu-jitsu base. As I mentioned, he is a black belt. He is a grappling coach at Valley Flow Striking, and he's a tough guy. He has a career in law enforcement in Chicago outside of fighting. Samaniego, on the other hand, was a 5-1 amateur and turned pro in 2019. Since turning pro, he has a 2-1 record, and he has a mutual opponent with Rodriguez on the in the amateur circuit in Alan Baum, and Samaniego defeated him to get the featherweight belt at I forget. I want to say it was HFC, the promotion that they were fighting on as amateurs. I believe they fought there as professionals as well. And that was the guy who actually defeated Rodriguez to take his belt right before Rodriguez turned pro. And it was a split decision loss for Rodriguez, and it was a decision win for Samaniego in the matchup, respectively, with Alan Baum. And Samaniego's one pro loss is James Lyons on CFFC, who's a pretty good fighter. Samaniego's an aggressive fighter. He's a good boxer. He hits quite hard. He does have some wrestling in his back pocket as well. I think that he might be the bigger guy in the cage here, which could benefit him in that department. He'll have to be careful with that kind of stuff with Rodriguez, who obviously is a great grappler. But with that said, Rodriguez doesn't really mind being on his back. He's a black belt. He's not afraid to throw a bunch of kicks out there because he doesn't really mind going to the ground too much. Samaniego is also a good athlete, but this is a close fight. It's aligned somewhat closely with Rodriguez being a -150 favorite, and I think I agree he should probably be the favorite here, but I just can't get to the window on this one. The aggression and potentially the size of Samaniego, we'll have to see what it looks like at weigh-in day. It's just going to keep my money in my pocket on this one, but I guess if I really got to pick a side, I'm going to lean toward Rodriguez here, but I think this is a really close fight, two really good fighters, and could probably go either way. Now this next one is a bit of a tricky one in my opinion. We have a light heavyweight matchup between Halston Williams and Tanner Marlow. Williams is a 1-1 fighter. He had a 4-3 amateur career, but one of those losses came by disqualification. I have not seen that fight, so I'm not really sure what happened there. But his one pro loss came to Greg Velasco on CFFC, and this was at heavyweight. Down at light heavyweight now. And Velasco is a guy we've seen 3 times now on CFFC, and he is 3-0 with 3 finishes, so I don't really see that as a bad loss for him, especially in his pro MMA debut. In his most recent fight, he scored a round 1 finish, and he's getting a short notice replacement opponent here. I believe he was scheduled to fight Logan Nail in this spot. And I've seen Williams training at a variety of gyms in Las Vegas. I saw him at Syndicate, saw him at Fight Capital. On Tapology, he is listed as training at Extreme Couture, so maybe he's spent some time there as well in the past. And from what I've seen on tape, he has a pretty wild and aggressive style. There's not really a ton of tape out there on him or on his opponent for this one, but he's nice and long with an 80-inch reach. Not sure what the reach number is on Marlow, but Williams, he's a big guy. He has a base in boxing as well as wrestling, and we've seen him work some wrestling on tape. Definitely looks heavy on top. In his fight on CFFC, his opponent was able to pass into mount without too much trouble after Williams overextended a little bit on the feet and got taken down, and he didn't get back up in that fight. He ended up getting finished in that round, and from what I've been able to see on social media, on his fighter Facebook page, he seems to be in pretty good shape coming into this fight. Standing across the cage from him will be Tanner Marlow, who is 29 years old, coming off a roughly 2-year layoff in this one. And he's a 3-0 pro, but he's had big gaps in between his fights. He had a fight in 2012, a fight in 2017, and a fight in 2019. And there were 3 stoppages, so impressive results, 100% finish rate. The competition has been a little bit weak. No winning records in there, a combined opponent record of 2-12, and that doesn't always mean too much for newer fighters. You normally aren't facing killers right out of the gate, but I feel like it is worth noting in this one. I think that his stand-up is pretty good. He's got a snappy jab. I think he's a little bit more composed and patient than what I've seen from Williams. And he has a good striking background. Couldn't find a ton of tape on him either, but from what I saw, it seemed like Marlow might be the slightly more polished striker. In terms of the grappling, we have seen him get some control time on top. The output is good on the ground. He looks to posture up and land damage. Pretty good jiu-jitsu game. Transitions well, takes dominant positions, and he's shown to have a pretty decent game in the clinch as well. And I'll admit, guys, I kind of have a poor read on this fight. There wasn't a ton of tape to go through. Williams opened up as a plus 275 dog, which I think is way too wide, and I feel like that was probably due to his 1-1 record going up against a 3-0 record, and he's now at even money. And to be honest, I would definitely pass on this fight unless you feel really strongly one way or another. I just don't really know how this one is going to go down. If I have to pick a side, I guess I'll take Williams because I think he'll have a bit of size, and he's been the more active fighter, looks to be getting a lot of training in. Marlow did look pretty solid on tape, but there are just a couple of unknowns for me. The inactivity worries me a little bit. Did take the fight on, relatively short notice. Not crazy, but relatively short notice. So I guess I'll lean Williams here, but I'm definitely not going to have a bet on this fight, that's for sure. Moving right along to some flyweights, we have a bout between Payton Brezinski and Cody Davis. And Brezinski's going to be making his LFA debut here, riding a 3-fight win streak. He's 4-1 as a pro with 4 rear naked choke finishes. His one loss was via guillotine. And he was a 7-1 amateur before turning pro. I believe he'll have a bit of a size advantage here. He's listed with a 3-inch height advantage, but you really never know until we see it at weigh-in and we get the, the official measurements from LFA before they put the fight on. and he doesn't have a whole lot of variety on the feet in terms of striking. Usually is just kind of trying to set up that takedown. He does have that classic wrestler's overhand right that is pretty solid when it connects, but he's a great wrestler and has an aggressive style there. I feel like size could play into his favor a little bit. You know, he's quick to intercept a kick and get his opponent down. If you overextend on a strike, he'll get in on a double leg. He's got a good offensive grappling game. Seen him throw down some pretty crazy ground and pound, really high volume, really hard shots from the top position, and he's shown some good transitions, good top game, really dangerous submission threat. Obviously, you know, all of his pro wins have come by rear naked choke, 100% finishing rate. And looking across the cage at Cody Davis, this is another good prospect here. This is a really good fight between two pretty high-level guys in the regional scene here. Cody Davis was a 7-0 amateur. He's now an undefeated 4-0 professional and fought on some pretty decent shows. He's fought on Kombache, fought on the Cage Warriors California card, fought on LXF, and he has one finish. It was a rear naked choke. The rest have all come by decision. You know, he's a good striker. He's a good boxer. He has a sharp jab. He's quick. He has quick combinations in the pocket, comfortable darting around the outside, and he circles out well when he gets too close to the cage, and he's going to need to be sharp there in those moments against a guy like Brezinski, who probably is going to try to shoot in and grab a takedown in those moments. Davis is not a primary grappler, but he is a strong guy, fairly strong in the clinch, works hard to defend the takedowns, has some wrestling himself. He's shown that before. Not sure if I really see him scoring takedowns in this fight. If he gets in, you know, on a really deep shot, maybe it could happen, but I feel like Brezinski will be able to dig those underhooks and stay up. Cody is a good athlete, very fast, very bouncy, and both look like good prospects here. I think this fight is going to be pretty close, so you know, in the event that it's going to be a close fight, I think I kind of gotta side with the dog here. Brezinski, you could have got him at plus 190 earlier, then he went to plus 160. Just let me pull up the most recent line on him here. So now around plus 125, plus 120. I'd say most of the value probably got eaten up a little bit, but at the same time, I think it's a close fight. So you're giving me a guy who's a wrestler, a little bit taller. He has a 100% finish rate with, you know, 4 rear naked chokes and has looked really good. And both guys are pretty similar on paper. And I'm just going to have to lean with the dog, I think, on this one. You know, Cody Law is really good. He definitely could get it done. But in a close fight, I'm going to side with the plus money. But yeah, earlier in the week, you know, plus 190, maybe I take a shot there, plus 160 even maybe, but now at plus 120, plus 125, I feel like the ship has sailed a little bit, so I'm just going to watch this one from the sidelines, but should be a really good fight and two good flyweight prospects on display. So moving up to the lightweight division, we have a match between Josh Streacker and Miguel Jacob. And Streacker is a pretty tall lightweight at 6'1". I think he'll have some size on his side in this matchup. He's 30 years old, in his prime, had a 5-1 amateur career and turned pro in 2016, and went on a pretty decent little run. You know, he went 6-3 before we first saw him inside the LFA octagon, and his LFA debut was against the very talented Tyler Ray, and he was submitted in round 2. He fought on Coliseum Combat in October and got a first-round finish, and he's finished 6 of his 7 wins. You know, you like to see that. He's only been finished once in his 4 losses, and that was the Tyler Ray fight where he was submitted. Streaker's a good fighter. He's a Jackson Wink guy, and you know, he has that that signature Jackson Wink sidekick / knee stomp, John Jones type technique. And you know, Chris Brown is another Jackson Wink fighter that we see on LFA that likes that technique a lot. Streaker's a bouncy striker. He's a 4th degree black belt in Taekwondo. Will break out some flashy kicks. Has a nice little uppercut that he can mix in. Nice jab to the body, and had a little bit of success on the feet against Tyler Ray in round 2 of that fight. But he was being pretty careful there, just because the threat of the takedown was really high in that match, and obviously he had difficulty dealing with that in the first round. Didn't want to end up back there. Streaker leaves his hands low. He's a decent counter striker as well. In terms of the grappling and wrestling, I mean, he did get dumped by Tyler Ray pretty easily in their fight, but it's Tyler Ray. He's not the first guy that's happened to. Miguel Jacob, on the other hand, started his career off 4-0 and made his LFA debut almost a year ago and was defeated by AJ Nichols, and had a fight about a month ago in Gladiator Challenge. He got a round 1 KO, and I mean, it's Gladiator Challenge. I hope you're getting a round 1 finish on that show. Jacob is training at King's MMA now in California, and he's a pretty good kickboxer. He's got a nice 1-2 with a good cross, stiff shots in the pocket, has some decent power as well. Only 1 knockout as a pro, which came in that fight on Gladiator Challenge, which I just mentioned. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into that, but he did score a knockdown early in his last LFA fight. He's got good body kicks, mixes in the high kicks as well. Seems to be a decent enough grappler. I think that both guys are going to primarily strike in this matchup, though. Jacob did have a little bit of trouble with the wrestling against Nichols on LFA. Got taken down a few times, struggled to get back to his feet a little bit, but he's a pretty athletic guy. Seen him get a little bit sluggish in the third round before. AJ Nichols really started putting it on him and scored a late finish in their fight. I think this fight is a little bit closer than it seems, but I still think I'm going to lean with the favorite in Miguel Jacob here. I feel like he might be a little bit more aggressive, a little more powerful. I really like that 1-2 that he has. At minus 215, I think I'm just going to leave this one alone. But yeah, if I got to pick a side here, I'm going to go with Miguel Jacob. That's going to bring us to the co-main event of the evening, which is going to be contested between Askar and Ryskulbek Ibraimov at bantamweight. And Askar is a fighter that we know, fighting on the same card as his brother here. He's a good fighter, been on the regional scene for a while now, been a pro since 2015, and he amassed a 10-0 record until 2020. He's 2-2 in the past 2 years. One of the losses was to Said Yakub Kakramanov in 2020. Obviously a guy that is 1-0 in the UFC now, so that hasn't aged badly. And then followed that fight up with a win over Kevin Wirth on LFA. That's a good win. Lost his next fight on LFA against Justin Wetzel, and then won a split decision over Leandro Gomez most recently on LFA 118. So he was finished by strikes in both of his losses. And also should note that we were supposed to see Askar in the UFC last year as a short notice replacement opponent for Cody Stamen, but he wasn't medically cleared to fight there, so he is still in the regionals right now. He's a good boxer. He has some good power in his hands, especially when he lands his hooks. Those are pretty heavy. He's got a great jab, and I believe he will have 2 inches of reach to utilize in this fight as well. He likes to be on the front foot, likes to cut off the cage. Really like his offensive game on the feet. Defensively is kind of where the main concern is for me. You know, he gets popped from time to time. Kakramanov was able to KO him in under a minute in 2020, and I think that in an extended period of time on the feet in this match, Askar will probably be the one landing more volume, though, and landing the better shots in the exchanges. I think his jab is going to be really important in this fight. I think it's going to be more active than Ibraimov's is. Grappling-wise, Askar is a good wrestler. That has been thought to be one of his greatest strengths thus far in his career. He's got pretty good top game, able to hold position, look for transitions, land strikes. We've seen him get into some trouble with the wrestling before too, however, in his loss against Justin Wetzel, which came on punches in the second round, showed that he can be taken down and exposed in the wrestling against the right opponent. Wetzel was able to control him for a lot of the first round, was able to get more of the same in round 2 and stop him in that round. And Askar had his moments. He is very technically sound in this aspect of his game, but bigger, stronger bantamweights with really good wrestling could be dangerous matchups for him, you know, like we saw against Wetzel. I don't really think Ibraimov is going to be a guy who's going to really push him in the same way. I do see Ibraimov being the one who wants to go to the ground, though, so I think that Askar is definitely going to have to defend a couple of takedowns here. Ibraimov is also coming up in weight from 125, so I think Askar will actually be the bigger man in the cage, which bodes well for him being able to, you know, find success at range as well as use his own wrestling. And he's a very talented fighter, not really a freak athlete or super strong, just very technically sound. The cardio is good. You know, is he as fresh in round 3 as he is in round 1? Maybe not, but nothing that really concerns me in that aspect. Now, talking about Ibraimov here, he is a 2-time national champion in MMA as an amateur in Kyrgyzstan in 2017 and 18. But, you know, he has pro fights on his Tapology page from as far back as 2013. So, you know, it's kind of a mystery as to what really counts on his record or doesn't, because on Instagram, he lists his record as 19-5. On Tapology, he's listed at 19-9, and in his last fight on Titan FC, they listed him as 19-5, and he was defeated in that fight. So I'm gonna go ahead and call it 19-6. Still very, very impressive record. And looking at Instagram, it appears he's been training at Fight Ready. Lots of pictures with Davison Figueiredo, Henry Cejudo, Captain Eric Albertin, and also appears to have gotten a photo with every other UFC fighter on the roster that was present at UFC 270. Lots of pictures with UFC fighters on there. And he's fought kind of a mixed bag of competition. Some pretty solid competition on ACB to, you know, some random guys that don't have a win yet. His 2 most recent fights came on Brave CF and Titan FC. He won his fight on Brave, then came over to the States to fight for the 125-pound title on Titan. and was defeated by Victor Diaz by submission in the third round there. And he did miss championship weight by 0.6 pounds in that fight, up at 135 now, so maybe that might suit him a little better. He did look a little sucked in at 125 pounds. He's a southpaw, leaves his lead hand out in front, fingers up, like he's casting a spell, and I can just hear Herb Dean saying, "Watch the fingers," in my head every time I watch this guy fight. But he does like to plant his front foot and really swing with that left hand. Doesn't have a ton of output on the feet a lot of times. It's just that left hand without much to really set it up or build off of it after the fact, and doesn't really implement his jab all that much. We've seen it to the head and to the body, but I would like to see it a little more from him going forward. I do like the way that he's able to avoid shots and circle out of the pocket on defense. Grappling-wise, he's a pretty solid grappler. Did struggle a little bit in this department against Victor Diaz, but, Diaz is a very big 125-pounder, pretty thick guy at that weight class. But, Ibraimov is up at 135 now, so the guys aren't going to get any smaller moving up in weight. Ibraimov wasn't totally outclassed there, though. He did rack up a bit of control time himself. Just defensively wasn't that great. It was much easier for Diaz to get him down than it was when he tried to take down Diaz. And in previous fights, we've seen him have a lot more success with this grappling game. Didn't really work quite as well there. And Askar does have pretty decent wrestling. I don't know if I really see Ibraimov being able to blanket a guy like Askar for 3 rounds. I see Ibraimov, initiating those sequences more in this fight. I feel like he's going to be the one who wants to go to the ground more. And he, if he really is training at fight ready, he's getting great training and with good guys to really fine tune this aspect of his game. But he is pretty good at getting guys down. Top control isn't super heavy. But I think Askar is going to be the better fighter in the upright exchanges. I see him beating Ibraimov to the punch with his jab, landing more volume on the feet. I think that Ibraimov is going to want to wrestle, and I think that he could have a bit of success there, but I can't really see him having enough success with that to win 2 out of 3 rounds on that alone with that game plan. I think that Askar will be a little bit bigger, which should play into his favor a little bit. Both really talented fighters, but I got to edge toward Askar in this spot. Alright, and that's going to bring us up to the main event. Great fight to headline this card between Dan Argueta and Mairon Santos at 135 pounds. So Dan Argueta is 6-0. He does obviously have that little asterisk on the Ultimate Fighter, exhibition loss to Ricky Turcios, who ended up winning the show. Not a bad loss. Not many guys at this level are going to be able to provide that much resistance from bottom against Argueta and against Argueta's wrestling, in my opinion. And it's kind of nice that he gets to have that learning experience of his first loss, but doesn't have to get rid of the 0 on the record, which is nice. So he's a guy from Jackson Wink, a really strong wrestler, making his 4th LFA appearance here and looking to make it 4-0 on the show. In 6 fights, he has 5 round 1 finishes. Really impressive win over Rodney Mondala last time out, getting a round 1 armbar. Pretty dominant performance. He did miss weight there, have to point that out. But Argueta's a southpaw. He has heavy hands. Not the most technically amazing striker out there. Striking game isn't really his bread and butter. Just kind of looking to use it to back you up so he can press forward, corral you against the cage, shoot a takedown, get you down. The striking does serve its purpose for him. But it is kind of hard to see Argueta, winning a stand-up fight if he were to stand for 15 minutes with Santos in this spot. He definitely does need to mix in that wrestling. That's his real strength. He's a very strong wrestler. Top pressure is really heavy. Good top game. Good ground and pound. He's a submission threat. I just really like his game when he gets guys down. I feel like he's really strong in that aspect. He's quick, really athletic build, powerful takedowns, powerful hands. Does carry a good amount of muscle mass, and that high energy output that goes along with Argueta's wrestling-based style is difficult to keep up for 15 minutes, but that's not to say he doesn't have a gas tank or that I have serious concerns about that aspect of his game. Mairon Santos now will be standing across the cage from him, and he's fought at a multitude of different weight classes, all the way from 125 up to 175. I haven't been able to find any evidence of him fighting at 135 before, but did see him at flyweight about 3 years ago. He's been fighting at 155 for the last 2 years, which was a span of 4 fights, and it's going to be interesting to see what effect that's going to have and how he'll look on the scale, because Argueta is a really big 135er, and Santos is only 1 inch taller than Argueta, I believe. Not sure what his reach number is, but I think that he might be a little bit longer too. Santos isn't like super cut up at 155 pounds or anything, so we'll see what his body looks like on weigh-in day, but Santos is a top prospect from Brazil, still very young. I believe he's 21 years old. and with a 12-0 record, that's very impressive. But I do think that Argueta has faced a better level of competition. But Santos has 7 knockouts. He's a teammate of Jessica Andrade and has joined her in Vegas to train with her prior to this event, I believe. He will be the better technical striker between the two, I'd assume here, just from what I've seen on tape. He has that high Muay Thai guard, stands pretty upright, and can be a little bit flat-footed, and I think there are going to be some openings for Argueta to shoot in, try to get some takedowns. Santos also has some very nice kicks, probably won't want to use too many body or high kicks in this match because Argueta will look to catch those, and you just can't give him any help getting his wrestling going. I can definitely see Santos being able to beat Argueta to the punch while standing. That jab is sharp, counters are good. I don't really think Argueta can beat this guy on the feet. I think while it's standing, Santos is going to be the guy with the volume. He has some pretty decent offensive wrestling. I am a little bit worried about how he's going to defend the wrestling of Argueta, though. I mean, if Santos stands with that high guard, a little bit flat-footed, I think that's going to be trouble. He is explosive with some of his movements, has really good hand speed, not super fast on his feet, not super athletic, but does have good cardio. If this ends up being like a 1-1 fight going into the third, Santos is going to be coming out strong, but I'm going to go with Argueta here. He opened at -120 and I bet him for the limit. I did the exact same thing when it moved to -150 and then he moved up to -300. So I arbitraged out of the position with a bet on Santos at +240. So this is untracked, of course, because people can't exactly tail this because it happens pretty quick, but it does pay to get those lines early. So I am free rolling on this fight, but I do like Argueta to win. I think that the opportunities for takedowns are going to present themselves as a byproduct of Santos' style. Not really confident in Santos' ability to defend those takedowns or provide a ton of resistance on the ground. Argueta is currently around -240, -250, while Santos is at +200. So yeah, I like Dan Argueta to win this one, and that's going to wrap it up for my LFA 123 predictions, guys. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Hope you guys have a great day. Best of luck this weekend with any bets that you choose to make.